the most durable, consistent, and one of the greatest examples of what it truly means to be a winner. Robert Parish was never the one to chase the spotlight. He simply did his job quietly, but his game spoke volumes, and we're going to give him the recognition that he always deserved. There is no question that Larry Bird and the Celtics don't win any of their titles without the Chief. All we have to do is point to his long list of accomplishments. He's a 9-time All-Star. He received 2 All-NBA selections. He's among 19 players to post over 20,000 points and 10,000 rebounds for their career. By the time you're watching this video, he ranks 2nd all-time in games played. He's 8th all-time in career rebounds, 10th in blocks, and 15th in defensive win shares. The most impressive aspect of his game was his longevity, and we'll certainly get to that during this video. But here's an example that truly blew me away. Let's look at his first playoff series as a member of the Boston Celtics at the age of 27. He averaged 17 points on 59% shooting and 8.5 rebounds per game against the Chicago Bulls. In the last full playoff series of his career, at the age of 39, he averaged 17 points on 54% shooting and 9.5 rebounds per game. This was against Alonzo Mourning and the Charlotte Hornets. Talk about sustained excellence. It's one thing to play for a long time, it's another to play at an all-star level for nearly 15 years straight. That's what sets him apart from the rest. How crazy is it that he got to play against John Havlicek and also Kobe Bryant? That's history right there. Although everyone knows him for what he did with the Boston Celtics, we don't want to dismiss how it all began. He played 4 years for Centenary College, a D3 school. Before he started his college career, he was in the middle of a big scandal. He took a standardized test that did not fit the NCAA's eligibility formula. Centenary converted his score to an equivalent that fit the formula, which had done for 12 other athletes in the previous 2 years. This action violated NCAA regulations. Therefore, he was deemed ineligible to play, and the school was asked to rescind his scholarship. The school refused to do this. As a result, they were placed on probation for 6 years. During this period, the college would not play in the tournament. Its results and statistics were excluded from weekly statistics, and its existence was not acknowledged in the NCAA's annual press guides. Despite all this going against him, he was still widely recognized as one of the top talents in the country. In fact, he was drafted twice by the ABA. But he finished his 4 years of college and was drafted by the Golden State Warriors in 1976. He was the 8th overall pick. Although he joined a team that won the title in 1975, Rick Barry and the Warriors were on the decline. He only got to play with this legendary player for 2 years before he decided to finish his career with the Houston Rockets. By 1979, Phil Smith and Clifford Ray were the only remaining members of the title-winning team. At that point, they weren't strong enough to make the playoffs, but Robert used his time to make his mark in the game. In the 1978-79 season, he had some of his best performances. Against the New York Knicks, he recorded his career high in rebounds. He pulled down 32 rebounds, along with 30 points on 55% shooting, 5 assists, 2 blocks, and 1 steal. Since the merger, that's only the 7th 30-30 game. Then against the Cleveland Cavaliers, he posted his career high in blocks. He had 11 blocks, along with 22 points on 50% shooting and 16 rebounds. It's no wonder that he led the league in defensive rating that season. The potential was there. He could absolutely bring value to any team. And there was one guy who saw greatness. That was Red Auerbach. He was a missing piece that the Celtics needed to get to the next level. They needed a big man after they lost Dave Cowens to retirement, and he was able to orchestrate one of the greatest trades in league history. He sent 2 first-round draft picks, including the number 1 overall choice, to Golden State for Robert Parish and their number 3 pick. The Warriors selected Joe Barry Carroll and Ricky Brown. The Celtics selected Kevin McHale. And just like that, he formed one of the greatest front lines the league has ever seen. The Celtics wasted no time in dominating. From this point forward, he helped Boston win over 60 games 5 times. They reached the finals 5 times, and they won 3 titles. He knew exactly what his role was, and he clicked immediately with his teammates. From 1981 to 1984, he was the team's second leading scorer, and he was second in rebounds for 3 out of those 4 seasons. In 1983, he was a leading rebounder. During the Larry Bird era, he led the team in blocks in 81, 82, 84, and an 89. The numbers say that he was very valuable to their success.
Chief was the foundation of the team. It wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have happened without Chief, because he just anchored that middle, and he was just a towering pillar of strength, and just so focused, so disciplined, and he didn't want any attention. He didn't want any of the nonsense that surrounds the greatness of a wonderful basketball team. He wanted to do his job, and he just wanted to be there with the guys.
You know, the thing that I remember most about him, it was an in-game situation. We always had to come back and double team him or McHale or Bird, because they were so good in the post. He's shooting it over John Sally, and I yell, "Oh, that's off." And he said, "No, baby, I'm double nickel." He said, "I shoot 55, I don't miss."
To clarify what his role was, this is what ML Carr said to the New York Times. He's the hub of the club. He's where the defense starts. He directs traffic back there, like Cowens did, and he runs the court probably better than any other center in the league. I didn't know Bill Russell, but I had to guess he's a lot like Russ was. End of quote. That might sound like a reach to compare him to the greatest Celtics player ever, but Coach K.C. Jones was able to back up what he said. In that same article, he said this: "Robert shot better than Russ did. He runs as well as Russ, and he's taller. He plays defense. He rebounds. He's easy to coach. He listens. He goes out and he does it. What more can you ask?" End of quote. It should be noted that K.C. Jones was a teammate of Russell in the 60s and was a part of 8 championship seasons, and he gave Parish the high praise of comparing him to one of the greatest players of all time. I believe he is in no way trying to say that Robert was as good as Russell was on defense, but it should be noted that the Celtics had to face some legendary centers in the finals. They needed to contain Moses Malone in the 1981 finals. He needed to contain Kareem for 3 different final series, and he had the tough matchup of facing the strong front line of the 1986 Rockets, Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon. It was on Robert Parish to not allow those all-time great centers to go off. For the most part, he was able to hold his ground against such intense competition. For those 5 final series, he averaged a combined 15.4 points on 48% shooting, 8.4 rebounds, and 1.7 blocks per game. He was never on the level of those legendary centers, but he was still good enough to play his role against the best competition. His role on the team did change as the years went by. When he first arrived, he was their second scoring option and their designated rim protector. For many basketball experts, he was considered the team's second most valuable player. He even finished 7th in the MVP race. During that season, he was able to record the best scoring game of his career. Against the San Antonio Spurs, he had 40 points on 65% shooting and 13 rebounds. But in 1982, he had the greatest season of his career. This was due to the way he elevated his game when his team needed it. Larry Bird was injured, and Bill Fish even made the curious decision of benching their star player for 19 games. Tiny Archibald was also out for 14 games and was coming off the bench for another 17 games. Despite all of this, the Celtics finished with a better record than the previous year. They won 63 games. There was even a stretch where they won 18 straight. The player that kept it all together was Robert Parish. During that impressive winning streak, he averaged 22.2 points on 54% shooting, 11.2 rebounds, and 3.6 blocks per game. During his prime years, there were moments where he looked like one of the best big men in the league. Now we can see why he finished 4th in MVP voting that season. When they needed him to step up, he proved so many times that he was capable of meeting the moment. No one is claiming that you can win a title with him as your best player, but as your second best player, the Celtics had enormous success. In the following seasons, the talent that Boston had kept growing and growing. Most notably was Kevin McHale. He would quickly become the team's second best player and one of the most talented power forwards we have ever seen. Then they added supremely talented two-way player Dennis Johnson in the mix. Then Danny Ainge started taking strides in his game. Then they later added Bill Walton, the former MVP winner. With all this talent, someone needed to sacrifice their game. Once again, it was Robert Parish who stepped up in a totally different way. This is a big part of his legacy that he doesn't get enough credit for. His willingness to sacrifice his numbers for the good of the team helped the Celtics become such a powerhouse. He proved throughout his Celtics tenure that he didn't have an ego. He mentioned in Sports Illustrated in 2004 how important that was for their success. He said, "It's good that I didn't have an ego. That's why I fit on that team. If I had been a guy who needed the ball, needed the touches, it wouldn't have worked. We had a lot of guys who needed the touches. I just went out there and played." End of quote. There are players who are only great individually, but then there are players who are great winners, who are champions. Robert knew this clear distinction and he was willing to adapt. So when you see that this team went to the finals for 4 straight years between 1984 to 1987 and won 2 titles. When you see that 1986 team and hear so many people call them the greatest team of all time, remember that it takes players like Robert Parish who are willing to put the team first and play their role without any drama. Then there are moments where you need that player to go above and beyond to save your season. There are so many times in the playoffs where he did exactly that. Remember Game 7 of the 1984 semifinals against the Knicks? He had 22 points on 71% shooting, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks. Or how about the legendary battle between the Lakers and the Celtics in the 1984 finals? Who was the Celtics' best player in that classic Game 4? There's a case to be made for Robert Parish. He had 25 points on 48% shooting, 12 rebounds, 3 steals, 2 blocks, and 2 assists. While the rest of the Big Four was struggling to make shots, Parish was the most efficient. Remember Michael Jordan's legendary 63-point game? Who was the one that prevented him from coming away with a victory? It was the Chief, who made this clutch basket to win the game. And we can't forget his contributions in the 1987 semifinals against the Milwaukee Bucks. In Game 5, he suffered a sprained ankle and missed Game 6. He came back for Game 7, and he had what could very possibly be the greatest performance of his career.
Playing a fabulous first half. Off the Parish for the jam. Now the Chief puts it down and comes with the jump shot. Hard. Lucas glides, and Parish was there for the block. Bird, and it's McHale's jump hook. Parish's offensive rebound. To accomplish that. And Parish doing his best to stop that.
He finished the game with 23 points on 45% shooting, 19 rebounds, and 4 blocks. It was the type of performance Celtics fans had come to expect with him. More often than not, he didn't disappoint. As time goes on, it's normal to expect a player to drop in production. It's a steady decline until your body forces you to retire. But with Robert Parish, he kept playing at the same level, year after year after year. When he was 35 years old, Larry Bird suffered an Achilles injury and he missed nearly the entire 1989 season. That was when Robert Parish went from averaging 14.3 points and 8.5 rebounds to 18.6 points and 12.5 rebounds. Then at 36 and 37 years old, he was selected to be an All-Star, not by the fans, but by the coaches. As he was pushing 40, he was still a very productive player. In fact, legendary sports writer Bob Ryan wrote this about him back in 1994. He plays the exact same game at 40 that he played at 35, 30, or 25. This is not the 40-year-old Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a liability playing on defense and a joke on the boards. Robert Parish still presents the entire center package in each game he plays. End of quote. Then their coach Chris Ford mentioned that he hadn't seen a drop off in his game, that he was amazed to see how hard he runs and how he's able to get through practice with the young players. What was his secret? He mentioned that he gave up eating red meat and he became devoted to martial arts. This puts a lot of emphasis on flexibility, and this allowed his body to be prepared for the grueling season. But there's another aspect that he mentioned to the Deseret News in 1996. He said, "I always marveled at how Kareem came to play every night when he very easily could have just went through the motions. Now that I'm in that position, I realize it's just mental toughness. I'm not going to get better from an athletic standpoint. It just boils down to, do you still want to play this game?" End of quote. For him to play that long, 21 seasons, to never play less than 10 games in a season for 20 straight years, that's mental toughness. That's someone who loves to play the game. He learned from the best and he followed his blueprint to perfection. When you hear the word longevity, Robert Parish is always among the first players that is brought up. The fact that he was able to hold the record for the most games played for this long is a testament to his greatness. It takes a truly special athlete to play at a high level for over 2 decades. After playing for the Charlotte Hornets and the Chicago Bulls in his 40s, he finally decided to retire from the game. By that time, he was considered a top 50 player, he was a Hall of Famer, and he is still unquestionably one of the top 75 players ever. But what about you all? What do you remember the most from his career? What do you think was the greatest aspect of his game? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.